You should obtain advice from your doctor or medical professional before participating in any activities offered by Chronically Awesome. Never rely on our content in place of seeking professional medical advice. By using this video, you agree that you are voluntarily using or acting upon our content. You also agree that, save where Chronically Awesome is at fault, your use of or acting upon the content is at your own risk, including, but not limited to, all risk to yourself of harm, injury or illness, and in particular any harm, injury or illness resulting from overexertion or exacerbation of any medical conditions caused by the use of the content. Always remember that, if you experience pain while using or acting upon our content, stop and consult your doctor or medical professional. Always warm up before a class and warm down after. You do not need to complete an entire class. You can always start with a short section and build up to completing a full class over time. Pace yourself and listen to your body. Most of all, have fun. Exercise should be empowering and make you feel good. If it's not fun, try a different style of class until you find something you enjoy.
Hi, I'm going to look at a little stability ball workout today. Now, a couple of things when we're working on a stability ball before we get going. First thing's to make sure the ball's the right size for us. They do come in a range of sizes and they don't always tell you that when you're buying them, especially if you're buying them from a cheap place. What I would tend to recommend with stability balls is buy the best you can afford. It is worth it because a really thin one is at risk of bursting on you and there can be quite a lot of injuries from that. So getting a good quality one, the one that I'm sat on now, is thicker in the vinyl and it's got an anti-burst system, which means if it does get a hole, it goes down slowly instead of going with a bang. I have sat on a stability ball that's gone with a bang and ended up with quite a bit of bruising and quite a damaged coccyx, so it is really important to try and make sure that you're on the best quality and the right size. In terms of size, you can find charts online which will give you a height to ball ratio, but generally if you're comfortable, if you can put your feet on the floor, square in front of you, without needing to reach and really be struggling, or without your knees being up near your chin, you're probably okay. I would generally suggest having your knees just slightly lower than your hips, and by doing that we just reduce the pressure through the knee joint slightly compared to having a right angle there. Other thing with stability balls and safety is just looking at our surroundings. So this is quite challenging when we're exercising in our own homes instead of in a dance studio. In a studio you'd expect a good clear space around you and you'd want a good clear space to both sides, front and back, and that's for obvious reasons. What we don't want is to fall off the ball and end up injuring ourselves. Now I'm in the safest space that I can actually find within my own home, so by opening the double doors here I've got space behind me if I was to come backwards off the ball. I do have space either side, although it's not ideal in terms of the amount of space, and I've got a clear space in front of me. Always be in the centre of the room if you can, as far away from any equipment that could injure you, and obviously make sure you're clear of any electrics, anything glass, anything that could really injure you if you do have a wobble or come off that ball. The other thing to be aware of, just on the floor as well, because I'm in a doorway, because there's a metal support at the bottom, I've put a mat down. And generally a mat's a good idea under a stability ball anyway, because it gives grip for your shoes and it prevents the ball from moving around as much as on certain slippery surfaces. So, safety aside, let's get going. I'm going to warm up, and if you've never been on a ball before, I would suggest doing this first part of the warm up either sat on a chair or stood up. And we're going to start out by marching. So the reason I wouldn't suggest warming up on the ball until you're comfortable with it, until it's a piece of equipment that you're comfortable with using, is because if you're sat on it, struggling to balance, having a bit of a wobble around, there's always going to be that risk that you're going to injure yourself because nothing's warmed up. So, like I say, dining chair, stood up and doing the same movements but from a standing position, whatever works for you. I'm going to bring my arms in now, so as with all my warm-ups, we just start off with a full body warm-up, progressive range of motion, so things like my arm swings start out small, and they're going to get bigger and bigger. So we're taking those joints through that full range of motion. If you are warming up sat on the ball, and you'll notice I'm not really bouncing or anything else at the moment. The ball is simply acting as a chair. Okay, I'm going to bring that to a stop. I'm going to go heel to toe. And then I'm going to just do an alternate curl with each arm. Swapping that to the other foot, heel to toe again. And whenever we do heel to toe, we're trying to hit the same point on the floor with both the heel and the toe. Okay, and come back to a march. I'm going to roll the shoulders. And you will see my warm-up here is very basic, and the reason for that is because this is a workout for beginning on a stability ball. There's a lot of advanced movements, and I will give a brief demonstration at the end of the video just to sort of give you an idea of where you might progress to on a ball if you're thinking, well, this all seems a bit too easy for me. When we're first on a ball, it's really important just to make sure we've got that control to begin with. I'm going to give the wrists a turn. And we're going to go both directions there. And then we're going to bring the arms up just to shoulder height to start with. And then progressively getting a little bit higher if we're able to. And then all the way up. If you have a lot of stiffness through your joints, if you know that you've got arthritis or another condition that's making it important to have that little bit longer just to warm everything up, then you could pause at this point and just spend a little bit longer doing these same movements just to get everything warm and loose. Finally, I'm going to come out to the sides. And I'm going to bring that to a stop. So, I'm going to bring in an assistant for a minute just to give you an idea of getting on and off the ball. So I'm just going to ask Miran to step into camera view for a second. If you can come. So this is my husband. It's out of camera shot partly, but that doesn't really matter. This is just purely to show you for safety getting on and off. So I'm just going to ask Miran to come behind the ball and just show you how we'd support it. So he's going to support it with both hands from the sides just to stop it from rolling. And at that point, if I'm to get off, you'll see that ball's nice and steady, nice and supported. And again, if you're getting on that ball, just having somebody there to support it whilst you're sitting down. Make sure you're comfortable and safe. Thank you. Perfect. And that's really important if you're getting used to the ball. You won't always need somebody to hold it. If you've got good core stability, good control, you might well find that you're absolutely fine getting on and off of it by yourself, but it's always good to know your options and to have that safety of somebody there at first. So once we're sat on our ball, assuming that we've not warmed up on it, we're sat on our ball, the first thing we're going to do is just make sure we've got feet shoulder width apart, nice and secure on the floor. We're just going to make sure we're sat nice and tall, tummy muscles engaged, shoulders back and down. So what we don't want to do is slouch on the ball. I actually can't slouch on a ball, but I have found people who can. So really important just to make sure we're sat nice and tall to begin with. And from sitting nice and tall, first thing I'm going to do is just have a very gentle bounce. So again, if you were new to being on a ball and you're really not confident at this point, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can put the ball next to a chair or with a chair on either side that you can hold on to. That can be good from the point of view of not wobbling off, but obviously there are safety implications for that as well. The other option, if it's a possibility for you, is to ask somebody to do what Miranda did before and just to come behind the ball and just carefully support it with both hands initially, just to make sure that you're nice and safe. So I'm going to keep that bouncing nice and low, but just purely for demonstration. As and when you're doing this routine and you're feeling confident, you can go taller. And at that point, that bounce becomes almost a sit to stand. I'm going to bring that back down to a stop. So when we stop something like bouncing, always bringing the ball to a stop, just means that we're not wobbling and getting launched all over the place. From there, we're going to do a few pelvic tilts. These are really good through pregnancy, if you've got back pain, if you're somebody that's got back problems. There are times when they wouldn't be indicated, and if you've been told not to do something like this, avoid it. But in general, all I'm going to do is tuck my tailbone under, so I've just rolled my pelvis forwards, then I'm going to come back to centre, and then I'm going to go the other way and just tilt my pelvis. So I'm pushing my bottom back now, and then back to centre. So I'm exaggerating the movement a little bit here, just to let you see what it is I'm doing. But all we want is that little tilt of the pelvis, forward and back, just to loosen it up. Really nice, simple exercise. And we're going to go for around 10 of those, 10 forward and 10 back. You could do all the forward first and then all the back, or you can do what I'm doing. One to the front and one to the back. And all the time making sure you're keeping that upper body nice and straight. Last one. Coming to a stop from that. Now we can do the same thing but just side to side a little bit, so just pushing the pelvis out to one side, back to the centre and out to the other. So again, I don't want to throw myself off balance, so these are not big movements, nice and controlled. And again, we're going to go for 10 of those. As and when you're able, if you want to make the movement that little bit bigger, we can do. So just last couple. And then the last one. Perfect. Now I've loosened that pelvis up a little bit. We're going to go for a circle movement. So with your bottom, you're going to draw a circle with the ball. So your feet aren't moving, your upper body staying nice and tall. You're going to circle the ball with your bottom. And we're going to go 10 each way. So we're going to reverse direction, and again 10 full circles, and you'll notice I'm just pausing very briefly after each one, so that's a complete repetition. The upper body still staying nice and tall, and you can make that movement smaller or bigger as you need to do. This is about what feels right for you and your body. Okay, perfect. So now we've got our pelvis loosened up, we've got everything down there engaged, and the bouncing's really good as well for engaging those pelvic floor muscles. Do be aware, if you do have a weak pelvic floor, the bouncing may sometimes cause you just to leak a little bit of urine. So if you know that that's something that you have a problem with, then just making sure that you've got a little pad or something in place is a really good idea, just to make sure that you're nice and safe through that. But it is a really good exercise for strengthening that pelvic floor up and engaging those muscles, so don't avoid it unless you really need to. So we're going to move away from the pelvis for a second now, and we're going to do a few leg lifts. So again, we're going to make sure we're sat really nice and tall before we start, and all we're going to do is lift the knee. Don't need to lift it very high. What you tend to see at first, and I'm just going to demonstrate what you don't want to do, is somebody lifting and wobbling off. So the reason for that tends to be that we've thrown all our weight over on the side that's still on the floor. We don't want to do that. So as I lift my knee, I actually push down with my bottom on that same side. So there's equal pressure still across my bottom on the ball while I'm lifting that knee up. May take a little bit of time to get the hang of, so we're going to do 10 of these again, 10 on each side, so that's 3 on each side for me now. What I'm doing, I'm keeping those tummy muscles nice and tense as I'm doing this, nice and engaged, back nice and tall. I know I keep saying that, I'm probably really fed up of hearing it by now, but there is a reason for that. When we're on a stability ball, it's these core muscles, so our back, our tummy, our pelvic floor, that actually keeps us from wobbling. So these are really good core stability exercises. Anytime you're sat on a ball, you're engaging those core muscles. And resting from that. So we have got the option with the ball to do all of the same arm exercises that we would do the rest of the time. So with little hand weights, we could go for some lateral raises, we could go for front raises, we could go for things like bicep curls, we could do an upright row movement, and then with a resistance band we could do things like take the band behind us and do a chest press forwards. There's a lot of things that you can do while sat on a ball, so they're not going to be included in this beginning routine, but as you start to feel confident on the ball, you can add these things in. So anything that you'd normally do in one of my armchair routines, or that you normally do stood up, can generally be adapted for the ball. Just be aware that if you're lifting heavier weights, just make sure that the weight limit on your ball is sufficient to take your own body weight and the weights that you're using as well. Okay, now we've had a little time to recover, we're going to go for a straight leg lift. So this is just slightly more challenging than that knee raise. So again, if you are holding on to chairs, you can start out by holding on and then work to being able to do it without doing. But all we're going to do, again keeping your bottom pushed down onto the ball, is just take one leg to straight and back down again. So we don't want any wobbles, we want that body nice and straight, and just take those legs up one at a time. So if you find it difficult to come all the way to straight, I'll just demonstrate with this other leg. We could just go part way. We could even just slide the heel out to start with and bring it back in again. But if we can, all the way to straight, and it's these muscles here that we're tensing as we bring the leg up. The other muscles should just be supporting and keeping that body nice and tall. So I may have lost count, but we're going for approximately 10. Okay, so making sure again feet are nice and flat. What we're going to do next is just try for a little bit of rotation in that upper body. So again, at this point, make sure you feel safe enough on the ball. If this is your first time on the ball, you're still feeling a little bit wobbly, you may well want to call it a day at this point and skip forward to a cool down, and that's absolutely fine. It can take quite a lot out of you being on a ball for the first time, and it does take time to build up that stability so that you're able to be confident on it. Again, you could also have somebody supporting it from behind if you're able. But on this one, we're just going to bring the arms up. We could take them out if that's more comfortable. They could be slightly lower down. We're just going to go for a little trunk twist. Again, our trick here is to be changing that balance on the upper part of the body, but without wobbling on the ball. And again, you'll notice that my legs and feet are still in the same position they always were. So what people tend to do with this exercise, and I'll demonstrate it afterwards, is end up coming very wide with the feet to try and change that base of support. And although that might help you not feel quite so wobbly, it's not actually the right technique and it's not what we're working on. So try and make sure you've always got those feet at shoulder width apart. Okay, so what we tend to find on that exercise is that feet come wide. So we've got a really wide base. And it does feel a whole lot more secure. But at the same time, it's taking those hips very wide. It's not the position that we want our body to be in. We want everything to be nicely lined up. So we want our knees to be over our ankle joints. It's okay if they're slightly behind, but we don't want to be out here somewhere. We just want everything to be nice and secure and nice and lined up always. So your body position's much like if you were sat in an armchair. So at this point you could add in those arm exercises that I mentioned before, so anything that you'd normally do with weights or with a band could be translated to the ball. Another thing that we can do is a few side bends, but again, I wouldn't recommend this if this is your first time on the ball. Build up to this. So once we've had that little rest and recovery, we can go for just a little side bend. When you do work up to this, again, try not to push your hips out like that, because if you push your hips out, that's when the ball starts to move and wobble. So we want the movement to be coming through these side muscles, through the upper body, but trying not to push those hips out too much. And we could progress to using weights for this exercise, and for the exercise previous where we were rotating the upper body, we could do that holding a weight as well. Okay, well done. So if this is your first time on a ball, that's actually quite a bit of exercise that we've done, because that's an awful lot of time that those muscles have had to keep us upright and work really hard to keep us sat nice and tall on the ball. So at this point, all we'd want to do is just loosen everything off again. So give the wrist a little bit of a turn if we've been using any weights. Give the shoulders a bit of a roll. And again, we might move back onto a chair for this, or back to standing up, and then work to the point where we're able to cool down on the ball. We've not done a big cardiovascular workout. I'm just going to turn my ankles now. So this isn't so much about bringing that heart rate down. Your heart rate may be a little bit elevated if this is new exercise to you, but this is more just about making sure everything's nice and loose and stretched off now. So we'd circle both directions with each foot. And that's just to get those ankle joints nice and loose because they've been supporting us. So obviously doing this on the ball is still really challenging those muscles. That's fine if it's something that your body's used to, but it's not a good idea at first. Just transfer off the ball if you need to. And then obviously what we'd want to do at this point is stretch everything out. So again, we could do standing versions of these stretches, but seated version, whether we're on an armchair or a ball, we're just going to take the arms forward and we're going to stretch that upper back out. And then we're going to release from that. We're going to take the arms back, smaller back if we can, bringing those shoulders back and just getting that stretch across the chest muscles. Take one arm up and we can do the little stretch out to the side muscles. Again, if we are on the ball, just making sure that we're nice and stable, we're not pushing that hip out whereby we'd lose control and injure ourselves. We're going to make sure we're stretching both sides equally. And we're going to sit back up. I'm going to come round to one side, make sure we lift that spine. Holding that, releasing to centre, and then going round to the other side. So I've got one hand on the opposite knee, the other hand is just resting on the ball. And releasing from that. If we've been working those shoulders, we're going to bring the arm across and just get those shoulder muscles stretched out at the back. I'm going to make sure we do that on both sides. So at this point, if you struggle with this particular stretch, which a lot of people do, just remember the alternative, which is just that big hug round and then just swapping which arm's on top and releasing from that. So legs, we're going to stretch out those hamstrings at the back, so we're going to take one leg out to the heels on the floor, weight onto the bent leg, and we're just going to hinge forward at the waist. And that just gives you that stretch at the back. And then once we're sat up, we're just going to pull the toe up towards the body, and that's just going to give us this stretch on this calf muscle. Now back in, same on the other side. So the other muscle that you're going to want to stretch out is the quadricep muscles, so this at the front of the leg. Just going to move that stretch to my calf, so toe up towards the body. So yeah, you're going to want to stretch out the quadricep, and that's not an easy stretch to do on the ball. It's going to be very difficult to do that sat down. I will give you a seated version, but often the standing up version where you take your heel towards your bottom behind you and then catch it in your hand is often the easier way to do it. If we are sat down and we need to get a stretch, if we're on a chair we can pop the foot under the chair. On the ball we have to take it out to the side a little bit and then just come back a little bit, lean back a little bit, and we do get that stretch both on the hip flexor and on the quadricep. But because we're having to come wide and we're changing the angle a bit, it's not the ideal stretch. So you want to stretch on both sides, but probably standing up, taking heel towards your bottom, catching it in your hand is the better way to get that stretch if you're able to. So that's a really simple stability ball workout, just as an introduction, making sure we're nice and safe all the way through. If you want to stay with me now, I'm just going to flash through to a couple of videos which are linked to this one, which are just going to show some of the more advanced movements. They're still fairly basic, but something that you can progress to as a foundation for more advanced movements. But these would only be done once you're fully confident and comfortable doing the workouts we've just done. Thanks. Okay, so the movement I'm going to demonstrate now is called a roll out. There's an awful lot of things that we can do as a progression from this movement, but all I really want to give you is this roll out to a bridge, so that we're shoulders end up on the ball, feet are on the floor, and I'm going to show you a get out as well, so that if you attempt this move and then something goes a little bit wrong, you can safely get out of it. So all we do is walk our feet away from the ball and roll the ball down our body. So again, you might want somebody there at first behind you if you're able to have. Just be aware if you're rolling off a mat that you may go off the end of it, don't catch your feet on it and trip yourself up. So all I'm going to do is walk myself down, and I'm just going to end up, my shoulders are on the ball. Again, my knees are at roughly right angles, and I want my bottom up. What I don't want to be doing sagging down at this point. So I want to be nice and straight. Shoulders on the ball. As I say, there's a lot of things you can progress to. You can go to lifting both legs up one at a time. You can go for side to side, little movements from here, and lots of other things, but this is a really good basic move. And the get out. If you do this, you find it's not working out for you, then you want to get out of it. So ideally, you want to come back up. So I'm just going to walk myself back up till I'm back where I started. And that's great if that works. But sometimes things go wrong, sometimes muscles might fatigue a little bit too much, or you might have a wobble. So, I'm going to come back out, position, oh, muscles are tired, what am I going to do? I'm just going to sit down. And it is just as simple as that. From there you can get back up again, back onto the ball and give it another go. This time I'm going to do a partial roll out, so I'm going to walk my feet out, but my back's going to stay supported on the ball. And there's a few things we can do from this position. We can go for a sit up, so I'm going to find a spot on the ceiling, keep my eyes on it and just go for a little curl. So you're not coming all the way up, it's a little curling movement through your abdominal muscles and back down again. Other ones from this movement would be things like chest flies, if you had little weights. So again with that one, just making sure if you've got any neck problems that you're not exacerbating them. If you can't control your neck without something supporting it in that position, just don't do it. So we also have a set of exercises that we can do on our tummies on the ball. So from here, we can take the feet on the floor and we can go for something like a back extension. Other things that we can do from here, we can come forward so the hands are on the floor and then do things like just lifting and lowering the legs. So that's going to work your bottom and your lower back a bit. Final one that we can do from that position, that's still a nice, fairly basic level, is a little bit of a forward roll out. So only ever going as far as you can comfortably go. You can go all the way till your feet are on the ball, or you can stay just so your tummy's on the ball. And we're just going to walk ourselves back down again. Finally, we have exercises while we're on the floor. The beauty of stability ball work when you're on the floor is you can't fall off the floor. So there's always a bonus. However, these are not necessarily the easiest of exercises. So, in lying down position, we can lift the ball with the feet and lower it. We can also take the feet up onto the ball, and then from there we're just going to push down with the feet and come up into a bridge position. So here you want your body nice and straight from your shoulders to your feet. feeling up to it, have a go, see how you get on. Good luck.